The plate hit the floor with a crash that seemed to echo forever. Roasted chicken, mashed potatoes, green beans, all of it scattered across the polished wood like debris from an explosion. For a second, nobody breathed. The wine glasses froze mid-air. Forks hung suspended. Even the candles seemed to stop flickering. Then Victor laughed. "If you want dinner, Harold," he said, looking down at me with that smirk I'd seen 100 times before, "lick it off the floor." His friends erupted. Actual laughter. Like this was the funniest thing they'd ever witnessed. Like humiliating a 68-year-old man in front of his own daughter and grandchildren was entertainment. I sat there, staring at my empty spot on the table where my plate had been just seconds ago. My hands were shaking. Not from fear. From something much deeper. Something that had been building for years, compressed into a single moment of clarity. Clara's face had gone white. My daughter, my pride, my everything, just sat there frozen, her mouth opening and closing like she wanted to speak but couldn't find the words. The kids looked confused, their young minds trying to process why Mommy's husband just knocked Grandpa's food on the ground. Would you stay silent if someone did this to you? In front of your family? In front of children who look up to you? Hi viewers, kindly tell us where you're watching from and what time it is. Warm welcome to the family, enjoy the story. I could feel every eye in that room on me. Waiting. Some probably expecting me to explode. Others maybe hoping I'd just leave quietly, save everyone the awkwardness of confrontation. Victor's friends were still chuckling, stealing glances at him like he was some kind of hero for putting the old man in his place. But I didn't explode. I didn't cry. I didn't even raise my voice. I stood up. Slowly. Deliberately. My chair scraped against the floor, cutting through the nervous laughter like a knife. I adjusted my coat, the good one I'd worn special for this dinner, the one I'd pressed that morning because I still believed family gatherings meant something. I straightened my shoulders and locked eyes with Victor. His smirk was still there, but something shifted in his expression. Maybe he saw something in my face he hadn't expected. Maybe he finally realized he'd crossed a line you don't come back from. The room went dead silent. Then I spoke 3 words. Just 3. But they carried the weight of every disrespect, every snide comment, every condescending look he'd given me over the years. Check your tomorrow. Victor's smirk faltered. Just for a second, but I saw it. His friends stopped laughing. Clara whispered something I couldn't quite hear. The kids stared. I didn't wait for a response. I walked out of that house, leaving my spilled dinner behind, leaving the confused faces and uncomfortable silence. My shoes clicked against the hardwood, then the driveway, then the street. And I didn't look back. Behind me, I heard Victor's voice trying to restart the laughter, trying to brush it off. "Crazy old man," he muttered. Always so dramatic. But his voice sounded different now. Uncertain. Like maybe, just maybe, he was starting to wonder what those 3 words actually meant. He should have wondered. Because by the next morning, I was going to do something that would change his life forever. Something that would make that spilled plate look like nothing. Something that would teach him a lesson about respect he'd never forget. But that night, walking home alone under the streetlights, all I could think about was my late wife, Lucinda. What would she have said if she'd seen what just happened? What would she have told me to do? I think I already knew the answer. And Victor? He had no idea what was coming. My name is Harold. Harold Thompson. 68 years old, though some days I feel 30 and others I feel 100. Depends on whether my knees are cooperating. I wasn't always this old man people underestimate. Once upon a time, I was young, hungry, and had dreams bigger than the small apartment I shared with Lucinda in South Boston. We had nothing but love and ambition, which sounds romantic until you're eating ramen for the 4th night in a row. I became an architect. Not the fancy kind designing skyscrapers in Manhattan. The regular kind. The one who designs homes for regular families trying to build something permanent in this temporary world. For 37 years, I drew blueprints, negotiated with contractors, stayed up nights recalculating budgets and stress loads. Every house I designed, I imagined the family who'd live there. The kids who'd grow up in those bedrooms. The Christmas mornings in those living rooms. The arguments in those kitchens that would eventually lead to forgiveness in those same kitchens. I built other people's dreams while building my own, brick by brick. Lucinda was my partner in everything. She taught 2nd grade, came home exhausted every day, and still found energy to help me with sketches at the kitchen table. We dreamed together about the life we were building. The house we'd own someday. The kids we'd raise. We had one child. Claire. God, that girl was everything. Is everything. When she was born, Lucinda held her and looked at me with tears streaming down her face and said, "We made something perfect, Harold." And we had. Clara was smart, kind, curious about everything. She'd sit on my lap while I worked and ask a million questions about angles and foundations. Why does the roof need to be shaped like that, Daddy? So the rain runs off, sweetheart. So nothing pools and rots the wood underneath. She absorbed everything like a sponge. I used to joke she'd be an architect too, carry on the family business. But Clara wanted to teach like her mother. Wanted to shape young minds instead of buildings. I was proud either way. Then everything changed when Clara was 15. Lucinda got sick. Started small, headaches, fatigue. We thought it was stress. Too many late nights grading papers, planning lessons. Then came the doctor's visits. The test. The words no one wants to hear. Stage 4. 6 months later she was gone. I won't lie to you, I broke. Completely shattered. There were mornings I didn't think I could get out of bed, didn't think I could face another day in a world without her laugh, her touch, her voice saying my name. But Clara needed me. 15 years old, mourning her mother, and terrified she'd lose her father too if I disappeared into grief. So I got up. Every single morning I got up. Made breakfast. Drove her to school. Went to work. Came home. Did homework with her. Pretended I was okay until eventually, some days I actually was. Raising a teenage daughter alone isn't for the weak. There were moments I had no idea what I was doing. The first time she got her period and I had to figure out the tampon aisle at CVS. When she wanted to talk about boys and I realized I had no clue how to give dating advice without sounding like an overprotective psycho. Her first heartbreak, sitting on her bed while she cried, wanting to hunt down the little punk who hurt her but knowing I just needed to be there and listen. I sacrificed everything for that girl. And I don't mean that in a guilt trip way. I mean it literally. Vacations? Never took them. New car? Drove the same beat-up Corolla for 15 years. Retirement savings? Poured most of it into her college fund. If you've ever put your child's future above your own comfort, hit that subscribe button. Because you know what I'm talking about. Clara graduated high school with honors. Got into a good college. Became a teacher just like her mother. Sometimes when I'd visit her classroom, I'd see Lucinda in the way Clara bent down to talk to her students, patient and kind. I thought I'd done it. Raised her right. Given her the tools to build a good life. Then she met Victor. It was at some charity event she dragged me to. One of those fancy dinners where people pay $200 for rubber chicken to feel good about helping the less fortunate. Victor was working the room, all charm and perfect teeth and tailored suit. I watched him from across the hall. Watched how he laughed at the right moments, touched people's elbows when he talked, made everyone feel like they were the most important person in the room. Clara was smitten immediately. Dad, he's amazing, she gushed on the ride home. He's smart, successful, funny. I smiled, nodded, said all the right father things. But something in my gut twisted. Something about the way Victor's eyes had scanned the room, calculating, measuring. Like he was playing chess while everyone else played checkers. I told myself I was being paranoid, overprotective. The cliché dad who thinks no man is good enough for his daughter. But now, sitting in my study at 2 in the morning after walking out of that dinner, staring at Lucinda's picture on my desk, I realized something. My gut had been right all along. And I'd ignored it because I wanted Clara to be happy. Wanted her to have the love story her mother and I had. But Victor wasn't me. Not even close. And tomorrow he was going to find out exactly what happens when you disrespect a man who spent his entire life building things to last. The first time Victor showed me who he really was, Clara and I were visiting their new apartment. Well, I say new, but it was temporary. They'd been dating about 8 months, and Victor had convinced Clara to move in with him before the engagement. I had opinions about that, but I kept them to myself. Different generation, different rules, and Clara was a grown woman making her own choices. The apartment was nice. Too nice, actually, for what Victor claimed he made as a junior marketing consultant. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the harbor, granite countertops, one of those espresso machines that cost more than my first car. Wow, I said, walking in with a housewarming gift, a plant because I'm that kind of old-fashioned. This is really something. Victor grinned that perfect grin. We work hard, play hard, right, Harold? He'd started calling me Harold instead of Sir or Mr. Thompson about a month prior. Small thing, but it felt deliberately casual. Like he was erasing the generational boundary between us. Clara gave me a tour while Victor made drinks. Her face was glowing. She was happy. That's all I wanted, right? For my daughter to be happy? Then we sat down for dinner. Clara had cooked lasagna, my favorite. The conversation was light at first. Work stuff. Plans for the holidays. Normal family dinner talk. Then Victor leaned back in his chair, swirling his wine, and said, So Harold, Clara tells me you still use a flip phone. I nodded. Does everything I need it to do. Make calls. Receive calls. Don't need much else. Victor laughed. Not a mean laugh. Not yet. Just amused. Man, that's wild. I can't imagine functioning without my smartphone. I mean, how do you check emails? Use GPS? Stay connected? I have a computer for emails, a map in my car for directions. And if people want to reach me, they know my number. But don't you feel like you're missing out? He was smiling, but there was something underneath. Something that felt like he was testing me. Like the world is moving forward and you're choosing to stay in the past. Clara jumped in quickly. Dad's always been practical. If it works, why change it? Because better things exist, Victor said, still smiling. Why ride a horse when you can drive a car? Why use a flip phone when smartphones make life easier? I could feel it then. The judgment. The subtle implication that I was outdated. A relic. Someone who couldn't keep up with the modern world. But I just smiled. Guess I'm an old dog who doesn't need new tricks. Well, Victor said, raising his glass, to old dogs and new tricks. May we all learn to evolve. Clara laughed nervously. I laughed too. We all laughed. But it wasn't funny. After that night, the comments became more frequent. Little digs disguised as jokes. Observations packaged as concern. At Clara's birthday dinner, Harold, you're still driving that old Corolla? Man, you should upgrade. What if it breaks down? You're not getting any younger. At Thanksgiving, these stories about blueprints and pencil sketches are charming, but kids today wouldn't understand. Everything's digital now. At Christmas, Harold, you really should let me help you set up online banking. It's not safe to still be going to the bank in person. Each time, Clara would glance between us, uncomfortable but unwilling to call him out. And each time I'd swallow my irritation and let it go. Because what was the alternative? Create drama? Make Clara choose between her father and her boyfriend? I wasn't that kind of father. Then came the engagement. Victor proposed at some fancy restaurant with a ring that probably cost more than I made in 6 months. Clara called me crying, happy tears, and I told her I was thrilled. Because she was happy. That's what mattered. But when Victor came to my house the next day to ask for my blessing, after the fact, I saw it clearly. This wasn't about respect or tradition. This was a performance. A box to check off. Something he could tell people he did. Mr. Thompson, he said, sitting in my living room playing the role perfectly. I love your daughter. I promise I'll take care of her. I appreciate that, I said. Clara's my whole world. Has been since her mother passed. She's told me about Lucinda, Victor said, and for a moment his mask slipped. Just slightly. Must have been hard raising her alone. It was. But I managed. Well, she won't be alone anymore, Victor said, standing up and extending his hand. She's got me now. The way he said it. Like he was replacing me. Like I was being retired from my position as Clara's protector. I shook his hand anyway. The wedding was beautiful. Clara looked like her mother. I walked her down the aisle, kissed her cheek, gave her away to Victor with a smile that hurt my face from forcing. At the reception during his speech, Victor thanked everyone. His parents, his friends, his groomsmen. Then, almost as an afterthought, he said, and of course Harold, for raising such an incredible woman. Must have been tough being a single father, but hey, you did okay. You did okay. Not, you did an amazing job. Not, we're grateful for your sacrifice. Just, you did okay. People clapped, smiled, clinked their glasses. Nobody noticed the insult buried in that compliment. Nobody except me. And maybe that was the worst part. Victor was so good at being subtly cruel that people didn't even catch it. But I caught it. Every single time. And I kept catching it year after year as my grandchildren were born and Victor's comments became more bold. More direct. Less hidden behind smiles. Harold, you probably don't understand crypto, do you? It's okay, it's a young person's game. Clara, maybe we shouldn't let your dad watch the kids alone. He might not keep up with them. You know what, Harold? Your generation had it easy. Bought houses for nothing. We're actually hustling in a real economy. Each comment was a paper cut. Individually nothing fatal. But together over time they bled me dry. I thought about confronting him 1,000 times. But what would I say? Stop making jokes about my age? I'd sound sensitive. Weak. Like I couldn't take a little ribbing. So I stayed quiet. Smiled through it. Told myself it didn't matter as long as Clara was happy. But here's the thing about staying quiet when people disrespect you. They don't stop. They escalate. And eventually they push you too far. That dinner, The one where Victor knocked my plate to the floor wasn't the first time he'd humiliated me. It was just the first time he did it so publicly, so cruelly that I couldn't pretend anymore. I couldn't protect Clara from the truth anymore. Her husband didn't just dislike me. He hated me, resented me, saw me as an obstacle to something he wanted. And the next morning I was going to find out exactly what that something was. I need to tell you about the money, because none of what happened next makes sense without understanding what was really at stake. People assume architects don't make much, and for most of my career they'd be right. I lived paycheck to paycheck, poured everything into Clara, saved what I could but nothing dramatic. Then, about 15 years ago, something unexpected happened. A developer approached me about a piece of land I'd inherited from my father. 5 acres right on the edge of downtown, back when downtown was nothing special. My father had bought it in the 60s for next to nothing, planning to build something on it eventually. He died before he could, and it passed to me. I'd forgotten about it, honestly. Paid the property taxes every year and didn't think much beyond that. But this developer saw something I didn't. The city was expanding. Downtown was being revitalized. That 5 acres sat right in the path of progress. "Mr. Thompson," he said, showing me projections and plans, "this land is going to be worth serious money in the next decade. I can offer you fair market value now, or you can hold it and potentially triple your investment." I held it, and he was right. Over the next 15 years, as the city grew and changed, that land became prime real estate. Developers circled like sharks. Offers came in monthly, each one higher than the last. I didn't sell. Not because I'm a genius investor. Because I'm sentimental. My father bought that land dreaming of building something. I couldn't just let it go to the highest bidder. Victor found out about it 3 years ago. We were at a family barbecue, and somehow the conversation turned to real estate. One of Victor's friends mentioned downtown property values skyrocketing, and Victor, trying to sound knowledgeable, started talking about investment opportunities. Clara, proud of her old man, piped up, "My dad actually owns land downtown." 5 acres, right, Dad? Victor's head snapped toward me so fast I thought he'd pull something. "You own land downtown?" His eyes were wide, calculating. "Since when?" "Since before you were born," I said, flipping burgers. "Inherited it from my father." 5 acres. Victor said it like he was tasting the words. "Do you know what that's worth?" "I have a rough idea." "No, I mean, do you really know?" He pulled out his phone, started searching property records. His fingers flew across the screen. Then he stopped, looked up at me. "Harold, this is worth." "I know what it's worth." "Have you thought about selling?" "Nope." "But." "Not interested." I saw something shift in his face that day. Something that went beyond casual interest. He looked at me differently after that. Not like an outdated father-in-law. Like an asset. A resource. Something to be managed. The question started immediately. "Have you made a will, Harold? You should really have your estate planning in order. Who's handling your finances? You might want to talk to my guy. He specializes in maximizing legacy assets. You know, at your age, you should think about putting things in a trust. For Clara and the kids. Make sure everything's protected. Always presented as concern. Always wrapped in care. But underneath I could feel it. Victor wasn't worried about my well-being. He was worried about his future payout. Clara didn't see it. Or maybe she didn't want to see it. When I gently mentioned that Victor seemed awfully interested in my finances, she'd defend him. "He's just trying to help, Dad. He works in finance. He knows about this stuff." "I've managed my own finances for 68 years, sweetheart." "I know, but wouldn't it be nice to have someone take some of that burden off your shoulders?" Burden. Like my life's work was something heavy that needed to be lifted away. About a year ago, I sat down with my lawyer, Patricia Chin. She'd been handling my affairs for 20 years since Lucinda passed. I trusted her completely. "Patricia," I said, "I want to set up a trust. For Clara and my grandchildren." "Smart move," she said, pulling out paperwork. "What about your son-in-law?" I paused. "What about him?" Typically, when a daughter is married, the husband benefits from inheritance either directly or indirectly. "You want him included?" I thought about it. Really thought about it. "Keep it separate," I finally said. "Clara gets full control. Victor has no access unless Clara explicitly gives it to him." Patricia's eyebrow raised. "That's unusual. And it might create tension." "Then there'll be tension." She set it up exactly as I requested. The land. The house. The retirement accounts. Everything structured so Clara and my grandchildren were protected, with Victor kept at arm's length. I didn't tell Clara about the specifics. Didn't want to start a fight. Figured it was just paperwork, insurance, something that wouldn't matter for years anyway. But Victor somehow found out. I don't know how. Maybe he snooped through Clara's documents. Maybe he pressured her into telling him. But 3 months ago he brought it up at a family dinner. So, Harold, he said, cutting his steak with deliberate precision, Clara mentioned you updated your will. I glanced at Clara. She looked uncomfortable. It's just estate planning. Everyone should have it. Sure, Victor said, still smiling that smile. Just seems like you're being awfully cautious about who gets what. Cautious how? Well, Clara told me about the trust structure. Seems like you don't trust her husband very much. The table went quiet. My grandchildren, too young to understand, kept eating. But Clara looked stricken. I trust my daughter completely, I said carefully. The trust is designed to protect her interests. From what? From life. From uncertainty. From people who might not have her best interests at heart. Victor set down his fork. People like me, you mean? I didn't say that. You didn't have to. Clara jumped in, trying to smooth things over, redirecting conversation to something safer. But the damage was done. Victor knew I'd blocked him out. And I knew he resented it. After that night, his treatment of me went from condescending to openly hostile. The jokes got meaner. The comments more cutting. The disrespect more blatant. He wasn't even pretending anymore. And I realized something sitting in my study the night he knocked my plate down, staring at trust documents and property deeds. This was never about respect. Never about family. Never about caring for Clara. This was about money. About securing his piece of my legacy. About making sure when I died he'd be positioned to benefit. And when I cut him out, made it clear he'd never see a dime, he stopped caring about maintaining appearances. That dinner, that moment of humiliation, was Victor showing me what he really thought. Not just about me but about everything I'd built. He thought he was entitled to it. Thought that marrying Clara gave him rights to what 3 generations of Thompsons had worked for. But he was wrong. And the next morning I was going to prove it. The dinner started so normal it was almost painful. I should have known better. Should have recognized the setup. But I was tired of being suspicious, tired of looking for hidden meanings in every invitation. When Clara called and said she wanted to host a family dinner, nothing special, just everyone together, I actually felt hopeful. Maybe things could get better. Maybe Victor was finally growing up, maturing past whatever resentment he carried. I was an idiot. I arrived at 6:30, carrying a bottle of wine I'd been saving for years. A 95 Bordeaux from the year Clara graduated high school. Special occasion wine, which should have been my first clue that I was overdressed for what was coming. The house smelled incredible. Garlic. Rosemary. That specific scent of a meal that's been cooking slow all day with love and attention. Clara met me at the door wearing an apron, her hair tied back, looking so much like her mother it hurt. Dad. She hugged me tight. Too tight. Like she was nervous about something. I'm so glad you came. Wouldn't miss it, sweetheart. Victor appeared behind her, all smiles and handshakes. Harold. Good to see you, man. Come in. Man. Always man. Like we were buddies. Equals. Like he hadn't spent the last 5 years treating me like expired milk. The dining room was beautiful. Clara had gone all out. White tablecloth. Good china. Candles. The kids were already seated, scrubbed clean and wearing their Sunday best. 2 of Victor's friends were there too, couple I'd met maybe twice before. Mark and Jennifer something. This is lovely, I said, taking my seat at the table. The place setting in front of me was perfect. Folded napkin. Full glass of water. Empty plate waiting for food. That plate. If I'd known what was coming, would I have left right then? Probably not. Because even knowing what Victor was, some part of me still wanted to believe family meant something to him. Dinner started with small talk. Safe topics. Weather. The kids' school activities. Mark's new job. Everyone laughing at appropriate times, passing bread, pouring wine. I started to relax. Maybe I'd been wrong. Maybe this really was just a nice family dinner. Then Clara brought out the main course. Roasted chicken with herbs. Garlic mashed potatoes. Green beans with almonds. Everything plated beautifully, restaurant-quality presentation. She set mine down in front of me with extra care, making sure everything was arranged just right. This looks amazing, sweetheart, I said. Learn from the best, she replied, squeezing my shoulder. We ate. The food was delicious. Conversation flowed. Victor told some story about work that everyone laughed at. I laughed too, even though I barely understood half the jargon he used. Tech industry nonsense that probably didn't mean anything anyway. Then about halfway through the meal, Victor stood up. "I'd like to make a toast," he announced, raising his glass. Everyone looked up, attentive. Clara was smiling, probably expecting something sweet about family or gratitude. She had no idea. "To family," Victor began, making eye contact with everyone at the table. "To the people who shaped us, who raised us, who gave us foundation. So far so good. Standard toast stuff. But also," he continued, and here's where his voice changed slightly, took on an edge, "to progress. To moving forward. To not being stuck in the past." I felt it then. The shift. This wasn't a nice toast. Because the world changes, right? What worked 30 years ago doesn't work now. Old methods. Old ideas. Old ways of thinking. He was looking directly at me now. They might have been great once, but time moves on. And people need to learn to adapt or get left behind. Clara's smile had frozen on her face. "Victor. I'm just saying," he cut her off smoothly, "that there's honor in acknowledging when you're outdated. When you're taking up space that should go to the new generation." Mark and Jennifer looked uncomfortable, suddenly very interested in their wine glasses. The kids looked confused. Clara looked horrified. But Victor kept going. "Some people just refuse to accept that their time has passed. They hold on to things." His eyes flicked to the ring on his finger, the expensive watch, telegraphing exactly what things he meant, that should rightfully go to those who'll actually do something useful with them. "Victor, that's enough," Clara said quietly. "Is it?" He turned to her. "Your father here has been hoarding resources, Clara. Lad. Money. Acting like he's going to live forever, like he knows better than everyone else how things should be managed. That's not. It is true." Victor's voice was louder now. Angrier. The wine was working on him, stripping away whatever restraint he usually maintained. "He doesn't trust me. He set up his entire estate to shut me out, like I'm some kind of threat. Like I haven't been taking care of you and these kids. You want to talk about taking care of my family?" I finally spoke, my voice quiet but cutting through his rant. "Let's talk about that." "Oh, here we go," Victor said, rolling his eyes. "The old man's going to lecture us about the good old days. About sacrifice and hard work and—" He reached toward my plate. At first, I thought he was reaching for the salt shaker behind it. But then his hand swept across the table in one deliberate motion, knocking my plate clean off the table. The crash was enormous. Everything I'd been eating, the chicken Clara had cooked with love, the potatoes she'd mashed by hand, scattered across the floor in an explosion of ceramic shards and gravy. Complete silence. Then Victor spoke, loud and clear, making sure everyone heard. "If you want dinner, Harold," he said, his face twisted into something ugly, something triumphant, "lick it off the floor." His friends, Mark and Jennifer, laughed. Actual genuine laughter. Like this was the funniest thing they'd witnessed all year. My hands started shaking. Not from fear. Not from weakness. From rage so pure, so concentrated that I could barely see straight. How dare he? In front of my daughter? In front of my grandchildren? How dare this spoiled, entitled little punk treat me like trash in my own family? But I didn't yell. Didn't throw anything. Didn't give him the satisfaction of seeing me lose control. Instead I stood up. Slowly. Every movement deliberate. Every second stretching out like eternity. I adjusted my coat. Straightened my collar. Buttoned the middle button with steady fingers. Then I looked Victor directly in the eyes and spoke 3 words that came from somewhere deep, somewhere cold, somewhere he'd never seen before. "Check your tomorrow." His smirk faltered. Just for a second, but it was there. Uncertainty flickering across his face like he'd just realized he made a miscalculation. Clara whispered, "Dad?" Her voice was broken, pleading. But I didn't stay to explain. Didn't stay to comfort her or scold him or fix anything. I walked out of that house, my footsteps echoing on the hardwood, and I didn't look back. Behind me, I heard Victor trying to restart the party, trying to brush off what he'd done. "Come on guys, he's just being dramatic. You know how old people are." But his voice sounded different now. Shaky. Like maybe he was starting to understand those 3 words meant something. Something bad. Something irreversible. He should have been terrified. Because tomorrow I was going to burn down every bridge between him and my money. Every single one. And there wouldn't be anything, not Clara's love, not his charm, not his protests, that could stop me. Victor wanted to see what happens when you disrespect a man who spent his life building things. He was about to find out. I didn't sleep that night. Couldn't. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that plate hitting the floor. Heard Victor's voice saying those words. Saw my grandchildren's confused faces trying to understand why someone would treat Grandpa that way. I sat in my study until dawn, surrounded by everything I'd built. The walls were covered with blueprints from projects decades old. Photographs of buildings I'd designed, families I'd helped house. Awards I'd never bothered to frame properly, just tacked up because Lucinda had insisted I should be proud. On my desk sat a picture of her, taken maybe 6 months before she got sick. We were at Clara's middle school graduation, standing in the sun, her hand in mine. She was laughing at something I'd said, her whole face lit up with joy. I picked up that photo and stared at it until my eyes burned. "What would you do, Lou?" I whispered to the empty room. "Tell me what you'd want me to do." But I already knew. Lucinda had been gentle, but she wasn't weak. She taught Clara to stand up for herself, to never let anyone make her feel small. She'd have been furious about what Victor did. Heartbroken but furious. She wouldn't want me to let this slide. Wouldn't want our grandchildren growing up thinking this was acceptable behavior. Around 3 in the morning, I pulled out my filing cabinet. Started going through documents I hadn't looked at in months. Property deeds, trust paperwork, bank statements, investment portfolios. Everything I'd built over 68 years was in these papers. Every sacrifice, every late night, every decision to go without so Clara could have more. Victor thought he'd get a piece of this? Thought humiliating me would have no consequences? He had another thing coming. I called Patricia Chen at 7 a.m., knowing she'd be in the office early. She always was. "Harold?" Her voice was surprised. "Everything okay?" "No," I said. "I need to see you today. This morning. It's urgent." "What's wrong?" "I'm changing everything." There was a pause. Patricia wasn't the type to ask unnecessary questions. "I'll clear my schedule. 9 o'clock. I'll be there." I hung up and looked around my study one more time. At the life I'd built. The legacy I'd protected. Then I got dressed in my best suit. The navy one I'd worn to Clara's wedding. Pressed shirt. Good tie. Polished shoes. If I was going to dismantle someone's future, I was going to look sharp doing it. The drive to Patricia's office took 20 minutes. I spent every second of it rehearsing what I'd say, how I'd explain. But the more I thought about it, the more certain I became. This wasn't revenge. This was justice. There's a difference, you know. Revenge is emotional, impulsive, meant to hurt someone because they hurt you. Justice is calculated, measured, meant to restore balance when someone's crossed a line they can't come back from. Victor had crossed that line. Patricia's office was in an older building downtown, the kind with crown molding and hardwood floors that creaked when you walked. She met me at the door, concern written all over her face. "Harold, you look exhausted." "What happened?" I told her everything. The dinner. The plate. Victor's words. The years of disrespect leading up to that moment. She listened without interrupting, her lawyer brain already working through implications and options. When I finished, she leaned back in her chair and let out a long breath. That's awful, Harold. I'm so sorry." "Don't be sorry. Help me fix it." "Fix it how?" "The downtown land. I want to sell it. Today." Her eyebrows shot up. "Today? Harold, that property is worth millions. You can't just." "I can. And I will. Get me a buyer who can close fast. I don't care if it's slightly under market value. I want it done by end of business." "Okay," she said slowly, making notes. "And the proceeds?" "Donated. Every single cent. To charity." "Which charity?" I smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. "Set up something in Victor's name. The Victor Morrison Foundation for something. I don't care what. Make it public. Make sure everyone knows Victor Morrison is such a generous man that millions were donated in his honor." Patricia's pen stopped moving. She looked up at me, understanding dawning. "You're going to make him look like a philanthropist while cutting him out completely." "Exactly. That's actually brilliant. He can't complain without looking like a terrible person." "But Harold, that's your retirement. Your nest egg. Are you sure?" "I've got enough," I said. "The house is paid off. My pension is solid. I'm not going to starve. But that land? Victor's been counting on that land. Planning his future around it. Probably already spending it in his head. And now he gets nothing. Now he gets nothing." Patricia was quiet for a moment, then nodded. "I'll make the calls." "What else?" "The trust fund. The one I set up for Clara and the kids. I want to add explicit language. Victor Morrison has zero access. Zero claim. Zero anything. If Clara divorces him, fine. She stays married to him, also fine. But his name doesn't appear anywhere in my estate except as specifically excluded." That'll create problems in their marriage. Their marriage already has problems. Clara just doesn't want to see them yet. Patricia made more notes, then looked up. This is going to hurt Clara, Harold. You know that, right? She's going to be caught in the middle. I know, I said, and my voice cracked slightly. But I can't let her husband treat me like garbage and pretend everything's fine. What message does that send to my grandkids? That it's okay to be cruel if you're family? That money makes you untouchable? No, Patricia agreed. It doesn't send that message. Then help me send the right one. She nodded. Give me 4 hours. I'll have papers ready by 1 p.m. I left her office feeling lighter than I had in years. Maybe it was lack of sleep. Maybe it was clarity. But walking out into the morning sun, I felt something I hadn't felt since Lucinda died. Purpose. Victor thought he'd won last night. Thought he'd put me in my place, showed everyone who really had power in this family. But he'd made one crucial mistake. He'd forgotten that power isn't about how loud you talk or how much you can humiliate someone. It's about what you control. And I controlled everything he wanted. By noon, Patricia called. We've got a buyer. Cash offer. Closing in 48 hours. Perfect. Harold, are you absolutely sure about this? This is. I'm sure. Okay. Come by at 1. We'll sign everything. I hung up and sat in my car, parked outside a coffee shop, watching people go about their normal lives. Young couples holding hands. Parents pushing strollers. Old men like me reading newspapers on benches. None of them knew what I was about to do. None of them would care if they did. But Victor would care. Or he'd care. And Clara? She'd understand eventually. Maybe not today. Maybe not this month. But someday she'd realize I didn't do this to hurt her. I did it to show her son and daughter that nobody, not even Daddy, gets to disrespect Grandpa. At 1 p.m. exactly, I walked back into Patricia's office. The papers were ready. Stacks of them. Every single document rewritten, restructured, locked down tighter than Fort Knox. This is the land sale agreement, Patricia explained, walking me through each stack. Buyer is Meridian Development. 7.2 million. Closing Friday. And the donation? Already set up. The Victor Morrison Charitable Trust. All proceeds go to literacy programs for underprivileged children. Ironically perfect, given that Clara's a teacher. I smiled. Lou would have liked that. She would have loved it, Patricia agreed. Now this stack is your revised trust. Clara remains primary beneficiary. Your grandchildren each get education funds. But look here, she pointed to a specific clause, explicit exclusion of Victor Morrison from any inheritance, direct or indirect. What if they're still married when I die? Doesn't matter. The money goes to Clara alone. If she chooses to share it with him, that's her decision. But legally he has no claim. Good. We spent the next hour signing papers. My hand cramped by the end, but I signed every single page. Every initial. Every witness line. When we finished, Patricia gathered everything into a folder and looked at me seriously. You know Victor's going to fight this. Let him fight. He might turn Clara against you. Then I'll know where she stands. Harold? Patricia's voice softened. Are you prepared to lose your daughter over this? That question hit me harder than I expected. Was I prepared? Could I survive losing Clara the way I'd lost Lucinda? But then I remembered my grandchildren's faces. Confused. Hurt. Watching their father humiliate their grandfather for sport. I'm prepared to show Clara who her husband really is, I said finally. What she does with that information is up to her. Patricia nodded, respecting my answer even if she didn't fully agree. I left her office with copies of everything. Proof. Documentation. Evidence that I'd done exactly what I said I'd do. Check your tomorrow, I told Victor. Tomorrow was here. And it was going to destroy him. I showed up at their house at noon the next day. Clara answered the door, eyes red from crying. She'd been up all night too, I could tell. Probably trying to process what happened, trying to make sense of her husband's behavior and her father's cryptic exit. Dad, she whispered, pulling me into a hug. I held her tight. Where is he? In the living room. Dad, what's going on? Victor's been acting strange all morning. He keeps checking his phone, making calls. He's angry and scared and won't tell me why. That's because he knows. Knows what? Where are the kids? At school. Why? Good. This conversation isn't for them. I walked past her into the living room. Victor was there, pacing, phone clutched in his hand like a lifeline. When he saw me, his face went through several emotions at once. Anger. Fear. Confusion. He settled on defensive aggression. What the hell did you do? he demanded. I set my briefcase down on their coffee table, opened it calmly, pulled out a brown envelope thick with documents. Clara, sit down, I said gently. Dad, you're scaring me. Sit down. She sat. Victor remained standing, trying to maintain some illusion of power. I looked at both of them, these two people who'd supposedly built a life together, and I saw what Clara couldn't yet. They weren't partners. They were a woman in love and a man in love with what she represented. Victor, you humiliated me 2 nights ago, I began, my voice steady. You knocked my dinner on the floor and told me to lick it up like a dog. In front of my daughter. In front of my grandchildren. In front of your friends. It was a joke. It was assault. It was disrespect. It was cruelty. I cut him off. And it was the final straw in years of you treating me like I'm worthless. That's not. Let me finish. My voice didn't rise, but something in my tone made him shut up. You spent 5 years making comments about my age, my career, my relevance. You've questioned my judgment, my capabilities, my worth as a father and grandfather. Clara looked stricken. Victor, is this true? He didn't answer. That told her everything. I tolerated it, I continued, because I wanted you to be happy, Clara. I wanted to believe Victor would grow up, mature, learn to respect the man who raised the woman he claims to love. I do love her. You love what she represents. You love that she's connected to money you thought would eventually be yours. That's insane. I pulled out the first document, set it on the coffee table between us. Do you remember the land downtown? I asked, looking directly at Victor. The 5 acres you've been salivating over for 3 years? His face went pale. I sold it. You, what? Yesterday. $7.2 million. Closed the deal this morning. Fastest property sale I've ever been part of. Victor's legs seemed to give out. He collapsed onto the couch next to Clara, staring at the document like it might bite him. You sold it, he repeated, his voice hollow. Every single acre. To Meridian Development. They're breaking ground next month on a mixed-use complex. But, that was... He couldn't finish the sentence. Couldn't admit what he'd been planning. Yours? I finished for him. It was never yours, Victor. It was mine. Built on my father's investment and my patience. What did you do with the money? Clara asked quietly, her teacher brain already working through implications. I pulled out the second document. This one made me smile. I donated it. Every cent, $7.2 million to charity. Victor made a sound like he'd been punched. To what charity? Clara's voice was barely a whisper. The Victor Morrison Charitable Trust. Silence. Complete, absolute silence. Then Victor exploded. You donated MY money to a charity in MY name? It wasn't your money, I said calmly. It was mine. But yes, I created a charitable foundation in your name. Focuses on literacy programs for underprivileged kids. It's already been announced. Local papers running a story tomorrow about what a generous, community-minded man you are. I'll sue you. I'll fight this. You can't just. I can't. I did. It's legal. Ironclad. Patricia Chin made sure of that. This is insane. Victor jumped up, pacing again. That money was supposed to be for Clara. For the kids. For our future. Clara and the kids are fine, I said. Which brings me to the second thing. I pulled out another envelope. Thicker. More official looking. What's that? Clara asked, though I think she already knew. My revised trust. My will. My entire estate restructure. I opened it and spread the papers out so they could both see. Clara, you remain my primary beneficiary. The house. My retirement accounts. Everything I've saved. It's yours. Dad. And the kids each have education funds. Full ride to any college they want. Protected. Untouchable. Thank you, she whispered, tears streaming down her face. But Victor. I turned to him. You need to understand something. Your name appears exactly once in these documents. Right here. I pointed to a specific clause. Explicit exclusion. You have 0 access to my estate. 0 claim. 0 anything. You can't do that. I already did. Clara's my wife. Legally, whatever she inherits is hers alone. The trust is structured specifically to prevent marital asset claims. Even if you divorce, you get nothing from my estate. Victor's face had gone from pale to red. Veins stood out on his forehead. His hands were shaking. This is because of one dinner? He shouted. One joke. You're destroying my future over one stupid moment. No, I said, and my voice was ice. This is because of 5 years of disrespect. 5 years of treating me like I'm worthless. 5 years of viewing my daughter as a meal ticket and my grandchildren as leverage. That dinner was just the moment you finally showed everyone who you really are. Clara, Victor turned to her, desperate. Tell him he's wrong. Tell him I love you. Tell him. Did you knock his plate down? Clara asked, her voice strange, distant. Victor froze. Did you tell my father to lick his dinner off the floor? It was just. Did you? Her voice cracked. Yes, he admitted. But I was drunk and I was angry about the trust and you thought humiliating him would, what? Make him change his mind? Make him respect you? I don't know. I wasn't thinking. That's the problem, Victor. Clara stood up, wiping her eyes. You never think. You just react. Just take. Just assume everything will work out because you're charming and people like you. Clara, please. My mother died when I was 15, she said, her voice gaining strength. My father raised me alone. Worked himself to exhaustion making sure I had everything I needed. Put me through college. Taught me to stand up for myself. And you knocked his dinner on the floor. The way she said it. Like she was finally seeing him clearly for the first time. Victor tried to grab her hand. She pulled away. Clara, I'm sorry. I'll apologize. I'll fix this. Just tell your father to undo. I'm not telling him anything, she said. This is between you and him. You disrespected him. You face the consequences. But the money? I don't care about the money. Clara shouted, and I'd never been more proud of my daughter. I care that you treated my father like trash. I care that our children watched you humiliate their grandfather. I care that you've apparently been making snide comments about him for years and I was too in love to notice. You're choosing him over me? I'm choosing respect over cruelty. There's a difference. Victor looked between us, realizing he'd lost. Not just the money. Not just my approval. But Clara's blind faith in him. That's what he'd really gambled and lost. You'll regret this, he said to me, trying one last time to sound threatening. Both of you. No, I said, gathering my documents. You'll regret it. Because word's going to spread, Victor. About what you did. About why I cut you out. People talk. Your friends, your co-workers, your family, they'll all hear eventually about the man who mocked his father-in-law and lost millions because of it. His face went white again. That's right, I said. This isn't just about money. This is about reputation. Legacy. The story people tell about you for the rest of your life. I closed my briefcase and walked to the door. Turned back one last time. Check your tomorrow, I told you. Well, tomorrow's here. And it looks a lot different than you planned. I walked out, leaving Victor standing in his living room, surrounded by documents that proved he'd destroyed his own future. Clara followed me to the door. Dad, she said softly. Thank you. For what? For loving me enough to show me the truth. I kissed her forehead and left. The news spread faster than I expected. By Monday morning, the local paper ran a front-page story. Local man donates $7.2 million to children's literacy. There was Victor's photo, pulled from some charity event he'd attended. The article gushed about his unexpected generosity and commitment to community. They quoted the donation, mentioned the Victor Morrison Charitable Trust, made him sound like a saint. Victor couldn't say anything. What would he say? Actually, that wasn't my money and I'm furious about the donation? He looked like a monster. So he stayed silent while everyone congratulated him. His coworkers, his boss, his parents, random people at the grocery store who'd seen the article. Victor, we had no idea you were so philanthropic. $7 million. That's incredible. You must feel so good about giving back. Each compliment was a knife. Each congratulations a reminder of what he'd lost. I heard about it through Clara, who called me that Monday evening. Dad, you should see him. He's barely eaten. Barely slept. Just sits there staring at his phone, reading comments on the article. Online. How are you? I asked. She was quiet for a moment. Confused. Hurt. Angry. I keep thinking about all the times he made little comments about you and I laughed them off. You didn't know. I should have known. I should have protected you. Sweetheart, that's not your job. Yes, it is, she said, voice cracking. You're my father. You sacrificed everything for me. The least I could do is notice when someone's treating you badly. You notice now. That's what matters. Another pause. Then, he wants us to go to therapy. Couples counseling. What do you want? I don't know. Part of me wants to fix this. We have kids together. A life together. But every time I look at him, I see him knocking your plate down. I hear him telling you to lick food off the floor. And I wonder how I married someone capable of that. Take your time deciding, I said. You don't have to make any choices right now. But, Clara, you're my daughter. Nothing Victor did or didn't do changes that. Whatever you decide about your marriage, I support you. Always. She cried then, and we stayed on the phone until she calmed down. Over the next few weeks, I watched from a distance as Victor's world slowly collapsed. His friends, Mark and Jennifer, the ones who'd laughed that night, distanced themselves. Word had gotten out about what really happened at that dinner. Someone had talked. Maybe Clara. Maybe one of the kids who'd mentioned it at school. However it happened, people knew. They knew Victor hadn't actually donated the money. Knew it came from his father-in-law. Knew it happened because of some family conflict involving disrespect and cruelty. Suddenly, Victor wasn't the generous philanthropist. He was the guy who'd been so awful his father-in-law cut him out entirely. His career took a hit. Not officially, but there were rumors about him being passed over for a promotion. Something about character concerns and family issues affecting his judgment. His parents called me. That was an awkward conversation. Mr. Thompson, we're trying to understand what happened, Victor's mother said, her voice strained. Victor won't talk about it. Just says you donated money he was expecting to inherit. Is that what he told you? Among other things. He says you hate him. That you've always hated him. I don't hate your son, Mrs. Morrison. But I don't respect him either. Not after what he did. What did he do? I told her. Everything. The years of comments, the building disrespect, and finally, that dinner. When I finished, there was a long silence. He knocked your plate down, she asked quietly, and told me to lick it off the floor. Oh God. She sounded horrified. I'm so sorry. I raised him better than that. Did you? She didn't answer. Couldn't answer. Because maybe she hadn't. Maybe Victor had always been this way and everyone had just made excuses because he was charming when he wanted to be. Is Clara leaving him? She asked finally. I don't know. That's her decision. She should, Mrs. Morrison said, surprising me. My son was cruel. And cruelty has consequences. We hung up shortly after. I never spoke to her again, but I appreciated her honesty. Meanwhile, my grandchildren started acting differently around me. The oldest, Emma, hugged me extra tight whenever she saw me. Grandpa, I'm sorry about what Daddy did, she whispered once. It's not your fault, sweetheart. But he was mean to you. Yes, he was. Why? How do you explain adult cruelty to a 9-year-old? How do you tell her that sometimes people hurt others because they're angry about things that have nothing to do with the person they're hurting? Sometimes, I said carefully, people forget what's important. They focus on things like money instead of things like respect. Your daddy made that mistake. Will you forgive him? I don't know yet. Mommy says forgiveness is important. Your mommy's right. But forgiveness doesn't mean pretending something didn't happen. It means acknowledging it happened and choosing not to let it control you anymore. Emma thought about that, then nodded. You're really smart, Grandpa. I'm really old. There's a difference. She giggled, and in that moment, I knew I'd made the right choice. This wasn't about revenge. Wasn't about punishing Victor. It was about teaching my grandchildren that actions have consequences. That treating people with cruelty doesn't just hurt them, it destroys your own future. Emma would remember this. Years from now, when she faced her own choices about respect and dignity, she'd remember what Grandpa did when someone crossed the line. That was worth more than any amount of money. Victor tried to talk to me once. Showed up at my house about a month after everything happened. I saw him through the window standing on my porch looking smaller somehow. Defeated. I almost didn't answer. But curiosity got the better of me. Harold, he said when I opened the door. He didn't try to come in. Just stood there on the porch. I need to talk to you. So talk. I'm sorry. For everything. The dinner, the comments, all of it. I was wrong. Yes, you were. Can we fix this? No. He blinked, clearly expecting a different answer. What do you mean, no? I mean exactly what I said. We can't fix this. You can apologize all you want, but apologies don't undo actions. They don't erase memories. They don't rebuild trust. So that's it? I'm just cut off forever? From my money? Yes. From my family? That depends on Clara. This isn't fair. Fair? I laughed. It wasn't a happy sound. You want to talk about fair? Is it fair that I worked my whole life building something only to have you treat me like garbage? Is it fair that my grandchildren had to watch their father humiliate their grandfather? Is it fair that my daughter married a man who values money over respect? I don't. You do. You valued what I had more than who I am. And now you're facing the consequences of that choice. I've lost everything. No, I corrected. You lost my inheritance. You still have a job, a house, a family if Clara chooses to stay. You lost the future you thought you'd have, not everything. It feels like everything. Good. Maybe now you'll understand how I felt when you told me to lick my dinner off the floor. He flinched. I can't take that back. No, you can't. So what now? Now you live with it. You figure out how to be a better man, not for me but for your wife and kids. You learn that respect isn't optional. And you accept that some bridges, once burned, don't get rebuilt. You're a hard man, Harold. I'm a man who knows his worth, I corrected. There's a difference. He stood there a moment longer, then turned and walked back to his car. I watched him drive away, feeling nothing. No satisfaction. No anger. Just emptiness where he used to be. And that was fine. And that was fine. Because the people who mattered, Clara, Emma, little Jack, they were still in my life. Victor had excluded himself. The cracks in Clara and Victor's marriage widened over the following months like fault lines before an earthquake. She didn't leave him immediately. I think part of her still hoped he'd magically transform into the man she thought she married. But hope only stretches so far before it snaps. I watched it happen from a careful distance. Clara would visit me on weekends, sometimes bringing the kids, sometimes alone. She'd sit at my kitchen table, the same one where I'd helped her with homework 20 years ago, and talk about her crumbling marriage. He's different now, she said one Saturday afternoon. Bitter. Paranoid. He thinks everyone's talking about him. They probably are. That doesn't help, Dad. I'm not trying to help him. I'm being honest. She stirred her coffee, not drinking it. He accused me yesterday of turning the kids against him. Are you? No. But Emma, she's 9. She remembers that dinner. Remembers you walking out. She's smart enough to figure out why. Smart like her mother. Don't? But she smiled slightly. Jack's too young to understand, but Emma? She watches Victor now. Analyzes him. I caught her correcting him when he was rude to a waiter last week. She said, Daddy, you should be nicer. Grandpa says respect matters. Pride swelled in my chest. She's right. Victor hates it. Hates that you're still influencing them. Still teaching them things that make him look bad. I'm not trying to make him look bad. He's doing that himself. Clara was quiet for a long moment. Do you think I should leave him? That's not my decision. But what do you think? I looked at my daughter, this woman I'd raised alone, this teacher who'd built a life helping kids learn, and chose my words carefully. I think you already know the answer. You're just scared to admit it. Her eyes filled with tears. What if I'm wrong? What if I give up on him too soon? What if the kids blame me? Clara, your kids are watching. They're learning what marriage looks like from you and Victor. Right now, they're learning that it's okay for one partner to be cruel, and the other partner to tolerate it. Is that the lesson you want to teach? She broke then, crying into her hands. I moved around the table and held her like I had when she was 15 and her mother had just died. I loved him, she sobbed. I really did. I know. When did it change? When did he become someone who'd treat you like that? Maybe he always was. Maybe you just didn't see it. How did I miss it? Because you wanted to believe in him. There's no shame in that. She cried for a while longer. Then she pulled back, wiped her face, and something in her expression had shifted. Hardened. I'm going to ask him to leave, she said. Are you sure? No. But I'm doing it anyway. That night, Clara told Victor she wanted a separation. He didn't take it well. I got the call around midnight from Clara, her voice shaking. Dad, he lost it. Started screaming about you, about the money, about how I chose you over him. The kids woke up. Emma was terrified. Where are you now? Still at home. Victor left. Drove off somewhere. I don't know where. Pack bags for you and the kids. Come here. Dad. Now Clara. Pack and come here. She did. 20 minutes later, she pulled into my driveway with 2 sleepy children and 3 hastily packed suitcases. I settled them in the guest room, the one I'd always kept made up for when they visited, and made hot chocolate for Emma and Jack while Clara called her lawyer. Can you recommend someone? She asked me after hanging up. Patricia can give you names. But Clara, be prepared. This is going to get ugly. Uglier than it already is? Victor's going to fight. He's lost my money. He's losing his reputation. He won't want to lose you and the kids too. He already lost us. He just doesn't know it yet. The divorce proceedings started the next week. Victor demanded joint custody. Demanded half of everything Clara owned. Demanded. His lawyers sent aggressive letters claiming emotional distress, alienation of affection, parental interference. Tried to paint me as the villain who destroyed a happy family out of spite. Patricia helped Clara find a good lawyer. A woman named Michelle Rodriguez who didn't take garbage from anyone. He's claiming your father manipulated you, Michelle explained during their first meeting. Says Harold Thompson used financial coercion to turn you against your husband. That's insane, Clara said. I know. But we need to be prepared to counter it. The counter was simple, the truth. Clara gave a deposition describing years of Victor's behavior. The comments about me. The building disrespect. The dinner where he'd finally crossed the line. Emma, in a carefully supervised interview with a child psychologist, described what she'd witnessed. How scared she'd been. How Grandpa had just walked away quietly instead of yelling back. My daddy was mean, she said in her 9-year-old voice. Grandpa didn't do anything wrong. That interview ended Victor's custody fight. The judge ruled that Emma was old enough to have her testimony considered, and her account matched Clara's perfectly. Victor got supervised visitation. Every other weekend, 4 hours at a time with a monitor present. He was furious. Called Clara's phone so many times she had to block him. Started showing up at her school until the principal threatened a restraining order. His friends, the few who hadn't already distanced themselves, tried to rally around him. But it was half-hearted. Word had spread too far. Too many people knew what he'd done. Mark and Jennifer, the couple who'd laughed that night? They divorced too. Apparently Jennifer had been having doubts about Mark's character for a while, and his willingness to laugh at cruelty was the final straw. Everything was falling apart around Victor. And the worst part for him? It was all his own fault. One afternoon, about 6 months after Clara filed for divorce, I was working in my garden when Victor showed up again. I saw him coming up the walk and considered going inside. But I was tired of running from confrontations. I was 68 years old, kneeling in dirt, planting tomatoes. If he wanted to talk, we'd talk. Harold, he said, stopping a few feet away. I didn't stand up. Just kept working the soil, pressing seeds into neat rows. Clara won't return my calls. Can't imagine why. The kids barely know me anymore. Supervised visitation will do that. This is your fault. His voice was flat. Empty. Like he'd said it so many times he didn't even believe it anymore. I finally looked up at him. He'd aged. Lost weight. Had circles under his eyes that made him look 10 years older than he was. No, I said. This is your fault. Every single bit of it. I apologized. Apologies don't erase actions. So what, I'm just supposed to lose everything? My wife, my kids, my future. You didn't lose them, Victor. You threw them away. There's a difference. He stood there, jaw working like he wanted to argue but couldn't find the words. You know what the worst part is? I said, turning back to my planting. You could have had everything. Clara loved you. The kids adored you. I would have welcomed you into this family completely if you'd just shown basic respect. I was trying to. You were trying to take. That's all you ever did. Take credit. Take control. Take what you thought should be yours. You never built anything. Never earned anything. Just positioned yourself next to people who had what you wanted and waited for it to fall into your lap. That's not true. Isn't it? Tell me one thing you built from scratch. One thing that's yours without someone else's foundation underneath it. Silence. That's what I thought, I said. You're a parasite, Victor. And parasites die when they kill their host. I loved Clara. No. You loved what Clara represented. The respectable wife. The connection to money. The ready-made family that made you look stable and successful. You don't know anything about my feelings. I know you humiliated her father in front of her children. I know you spent years tearing down the man who raised her. I know that when you thought you'd lost access to my money, you lashed out like a spoiled child. I finally stood up, knees creaking. That's not love, Victor. That's possession. He looked at me with something like hatred. But underneath it, I saw what he was really feeling. Shame. Because he knew I was right. Deep down, underneath all the justifications and excuses, he knew. I can't fix this, can I? He asked quietly. No. There's nothing I can do? You can be a better father during your 4 hours every other weekend. You can stop calling Clara. You can accept that you destroyed your own life and start building a new one that doesn't depend on other people's foundations. How? That's not my problem. He stood there a moment longer, then nodded slowly. I really hate you, Harold. I know. But you hate yourself more. That's why this hurts so bad. He left without another word. I never saw him again. Clara's divorce finalized 8 months after she filed. She got the house, primary custody, child support. Victor got his supervised visitation and a mountain of legal bills. She and the kids moved back into her house after Victor cleared out his things. She changed the locks, repainted the walls, made it hers again instead of theirs. Emma started therapy to process what she'd witnessed. The therapist said she was resilient, smart, handling it better than most kids her age would. She has a strong role model, the therapist told Clara. Someone who showed her that standing up for yourself doesn't mean violence or cruelty. Just quiet strength. Clara told me that, and I'd be lying if I said it didn't make me tear up a little. Jack was too young to remember much. He knew Daddy lived somewhere else now, came to visit sometimes. But he was okay. Kids are resilient when they have at least one stable parent. And Clara? She was healing. Slowly. Some days were harder than others. Days when she'd see happy couples and wonder if she'd ever trust anyone again. Days when she'd doubt her decision, wonder if she'd given up too easily. But then she'd remember that plate hitting the floor. My face as I stood up and walked out. The way Victor had laughed about humiliating me. And she'd know she made the right choice. One Sunday afternoon, about a year after everything started, Clara and the kids came over for dinner. I'd made pot roast, Lucinda's recipe, the one that had taken me 10 years to get right. We sat around my dining room table, the same one where I'd eaten alone for so many years after losing my wife. But now it was full again. Claire, Emma, Jip. Laughter and stories and spilled milk and everything that makes a family real. After dinner, while the kids played in the backyard, Clara helped me with dishes. Dad, she said, drying a plate carefully. Thank you. For what? For not letting me stay blind. For showing me who Victor really was. I didn't do that. He showed you himself. But you gave me permission to see it. To acknowledge it. To leave. She set down the plate and hugged me. You saved me. You saved yourself, sweetheart. I just gave you a push. She laughed through tears. Some push. You donated $7 million. Worth every penny. We finished the dishes in comfortable silence. Through the window, I watched Emma teaching Jack how to catch fireflies in the twilight. And I thought about Lucinda. About what she'd say if she could see this. Her daughter strong and independent. Her grandchildren safe and loved. Her husband still fighting the good fight at 68. She'd be proud. I was sure of it. 2 years after that dinner, I found myself sitting in the same chair in my study where this whole thing started. But everything was different now. Clara had started dating again. Nothing serious yet, but she was open to it. Learning to trust. Taking her time. Emma was 11 now, excelling in school, showing signs of becoming a writer. She'd recently won an essay contest about heroes in everyday life. Wrote about her grandfather who taught her that respect matters more than money. I cried reading that. Jack was 6, obsessed with dinosaurs and soccer. Barely remembered Victor, which was sad in its own way but maybe for the best. And me? I was 70. Knees hurt worse than they used to. Eyes weren't what they once were. But I was content in a way I hadn't been in years. The Victor Morrison Charitable Trust was thriving. Turned out $7 million could do a lot of good when properly managed. Hundreds of kids were learning to read because of that money. Victor himself had moved away. Last I heard, he was living in another state, working some middle management job. Alone. Starting over. Sometimes I wondered if he'd learned anything. If humiliation and loss had taught him what respect couldn't. I hope so. Not for my sake, but for his. For whoever he might hurt next if he hadn't changed. But that wasn't my responsibility anymore. My responsibility was sitting in my living room right now, doing homework while I made dinner. Grandpa, Emma called out. Can you help me with this math problem? What kind of math? Geometry. Something about angles and proofs. I smiled. Geometry. Full circle from where I'd started, drawing blueprints and calculating angles to build homes for other families. Come here, sweetheart. Let me show you. She brought her textbook over and we worked through the problem together. I showed her how each step led logically to the next, how you couldn't skip parts just because they seemed unnecessary. It's like building a house, I explained. Every angle matters. Every calculation has to be right. Skip one step and the whole structure can fail. Is that why you were so good at your job? I was good at my job because I cared about the people who'd live in the houses I designed. About their safety, their comfort, their future. Like how you care about us. Exactly like that. She worked through the rest of the problem on her own, getting it right, beaming with pride. That night, after Clara picked up the kids and headed home, I sat down at my desk and did something I'd been thinking about for weeks. I pulled out my phone. Yes, I'd finally upgraded to a smartphone, much to everyone's amusement, and opened the voice recorder app. "My name is Harold Thompson," I said into the microphone, "and I want to tell you about something that happened 2 years ago. About respect, dignity, and the legacy we leave behind." I recorded for an hour. Told the whole story. The dinner. The plate. My response. Everything that followed. When I finished, I saved it with a simple title, "For Emma and Jack." One day when they were older, I'd give them this recording. Let them hear in my own words why I did what I did. Why I chose dignity over peace. Why I cut off their father rather than tolerate his cruelty. They'd understand. Maybe not immediately, but eventually. Because the real inheritance I was leaving them wasn't money. It was values. The understanding that respect isn't negotiable. That how you treat people matters more than what you own. That standing up for yourself doesn't make you cruel, it makes you strong. That wealth means nothing if you lose your character acquiring it. A few weeks later I got a letter. Handwritten. Postmarked from wherever Victor was living now. I almost threw it away without reading it. Almost. But curiosity won. The letter was short. "Harold, I know you probably don't want to hear from me. I don't blame you. I spent 2 years thinking about that night. About what I did. About who I was. You were right. About all of it. I was arrogant. Entitled. Cruel. I treated you like garbage because I saw you as an obstacle to what I wanted. I didn't see you as a person. As Clara's father. As someone who deserved basic human decency. I lost everything because of that. My family. My reputation. My future. But I gained something too. Perspective. I'm in therapy now. Actually dealing with my issues instead of blaming everyone else for them. It's hard. Really hard. But necessary. I'm not writing this to ask for forgiveness. I don't deserve it. I'm writing to say thank you. Thank you for not letting me get away with it. Thank you for showing Clara who I really was before I could do more damage. Thank you for protecting your grandchildren from learning that cruelty is acceptable. You gave me consequences when no one else ever had. And those consequences, as much as they hurt, were exactly what I needed. I don't know if I'll ever see Emma and Jack again. Probably not. Clara's made it clear that unless I can prove real change, supervised visits are all I get. And even those might end. But if I ever do see them again, I want to be someone they can be proud of. Not the man who humiliated their grandfather, but someone who learned, who grew, who became better. I'm not there yet. Might never get there. But I'm trying. Thank you for that push off the cliff. I needed to hit rock bottom. Victor. I read the letter 3 times. Looked for manipulation. For hidden agendas. For anything that suggested this was just another play for sympathy. But all I found was honesty. Raw. Painful. Real. Maybe he had changed. Maybe this was genuine growth. Or maybe it was just words on paper and he'd be the same person once the shame wore off. I didn't know. Couldn't know. But I folded the letter carefully and put it in a drawer. Not to treasure it. Just to keep it. Because if Victor really had changed, if Emma and Jack ever asked about their father years from now, I wanted to be able to show them this. Evidence that people can grow. That consequences can lead to transformation. That even someone who seemed irredeemable might find redemption if they're willing to do the work. I wouldn't make it easy for him. Wouldn't reach out or offer support. That wasn't my job. But I wouldn't stand in his way if he genuinely became a better person. That was grace. Not for him, but for my grandchildren who deserved the possibility of a father worth knowing. 3 years after that dinner, I took Emma and Jack to the site where my downtown land used to be. The mixed-use development was complete now. Apartments. Shops. A community center. Hundreds of people living and working on land my father had bought for next to nothing in the 60s. This was yours? Emma asked, looking up at the buildings. Was. Not anymore. Why did you sell it? I knelt down, knees screaming in protest, and looked at both of them seriously. Because sometimes, I said, the right thing to do costs you something. Sometimes standing up for yourself means giving up things you wanted. But you do it anyway because your dignity is worth more than any amount of money. Did you stand up for yourself, Grandpa? Jack asked. I did. Was it scary? Terrifying. But you did it anyway? I did it anyway. Emma was quiet, processing. Then she asked the question I'd been waiting for. Do you regret it? I looked at these 2 kids. Products of a broken marriage, yes. But strong. Resilient. Learning lessons about respect and dignity that most adults never master. Not for a second, I said. We stood there a while longer, watching people move through the building that stood where my legacy used to be. And I realized something. This was my legacy. Not the building. Not the money. But these kids, learning that character matters more than wealth. That standing up for yourself is worth the cost. That respect is earned through how you treat people, not what you own. That's what I was leaving behind. And that was worth every penny of $7 million. That evening back home, I pulled out the recording I'd made for Emma and Jack. Updated it with final thoughts. If you're listening to this, I said, I'm probably gone. And you're old enough now to understand what happened. Why I did what I did. I want you to know something important. What I did wasn't about revenge. Wasn't about being petty or cruel. It was about drawing a line. About saying this far and no further when someone crosses into territory where respect lives. You'll face moments like this in your own lives. Moments where someone treats you badly and you have to decide, do I accept this? Do I stay silent to keep peace? Or do I stand up even if it costs me something? I hope I've taught you to stand up. To value yourself enough to walk away from people who diminish you. To understand that real power isn't in how much money you have or how loud you can yell. Real power is knowing your worth and refusing to accept less than you deserve. Your grandmother Lucinda taught me that. And I've spent my life trying to teach your mother. And through her trying to teach you. I love you both. Always have. Always will. Even when I'm gone, that love remains. Built into every lesson. Every story. Every choice I made to protect your future. Remember, respect isn't optional. Dignity isn't negotiable. And legacy isn't what you leave behind, it's who you leave behind. Be good humans. Be strong. Be kind. Be exactly who you are. And if anyone ever tells you to lick your dinner off the floor, walk away. Walk away and don't look back. I saved the recording, backed it up to 3 different places, and put the password in my will with instructions for Clara to give it to the kids when they turned 18. Then I made dinner. Simple. Quiet. Content. Because at 70 years old, sitting in a house paid off by my own hard work, with a daughter who loved me and grandchildren who respected me, I'd finally found peace. Victor had taught me something valuable, even if he didn't mean to. Sometimes the best revenge isn't revenge at all. It's living well. Loving fully. Standing firm in who you are while others crumble trying to tear you down. He wanted my money. My legacy. My approval. He got none of it. But I'd gotten something better. The knowledge that I'd stood up when it mattered. That I'd protected my family. That I'd taught the next generation what true strength looks like. And that, more than any amount of money, was worth fighting for. The plate had hit the floor 3 years ago. But I was still standing. And I'd keep standing until my last breath, protecting what really mattered. Not buildings or bank accounts, but dignity, respect, love. The things money can't buy and cruelty can't destroy. That's the real inheritance. That's what lasts. If Harold's story moved you, if it made you think about respect, dignity, and the legacy we leave behind, hit that subscribe button right now. Turn on notifications so you never miss stories like this. Real tales of justice, redemption, and standing up when it matters most. Drop a comment below telling us, would you have done what Harold did? Have you ever had to cut someone out of your life to protect your dignity? Share your story. Your words might inspire someone else facing the same impossible choice. This channel is about more than entertainment. It's about lessons, about courage, about understanding that sometimes love means drawing hard lines. More stories are coming. Stories that will challenge you, inspire you, make you think about what you do in impossible situations. Don't miss them. Subscribe now. And remember Harold's words, check your tomorrow. Because the choices you make today determine the legacy you leave behind. See you in the next story. Stay strong, stay dignified, and never, ever let anyone make you lick your dinner off the floor.